This is Adobe Photoshop's user interface. It may seem a bit complex in the first glance, but it is quite simple and straightforward actually. So let me show you the most important parts of Photoshop's user interface. Similar to many other programs, Photoshop has a menu bar along the top. And here we have access to the standard menus such as File, where you can create a new document, open a previously made document, or save your file. You have also menus such as Edit, where you have access to cut, copy, and paste. Also, you can have access to the Image menu, where you can change the size of your image or rotate your image, for example. Have the Layer menu, the Type menu, Select menu, and we also have Filter menu, where you can actually have access to many filters that allows you to apply filters on your image. We also have 3D menu, View menu, and of course the Window menu, which allows you to activate different elements in your user interface. For example, if I click on the navigator here, you will see that the navigator appears on the user interface. So just remember that this is the menu bar and it gives you access to some of the options that the program offers. You don't need to know all these options, you will gradually learn about them. At the center of the user interface, we have the main document. This is actually our working area, and we can think about this as sort of a digital canvas or a digital paper. On the left side of the user interface, we have our Tools panel. On the Tools panel, we have access to all the tools that Photoshop has. We can think about these tools as our digital arts equipment. For example, we have a tool like the brush that we can use in order to draw something on canvas. We also have a tool like the eraser that of course is used to erase part of the drawing. Also, we have another tool such as the paint bucket that we can use in order to color different elements on the canvas. And then we have a tool such as the shape tool that we can use in order to draw shapes very accurately, geometrical shapes actually. And then there is another tool called Type tool that we can use in order to create or add text to our document. Now, if you look at the tools on the Tools panel, you will note that on the bottom right side of some of the tools on the Tools panel, there is a small triangle. What does that mean? Well, it means that if you click and hold on these tools, you will have access to extended tools. For example, if I click and hold on the brush tool, I will have access to pencil tool, color replacement tool, and mixer brush tool, as well as the brush tool. Similarly, if I click and hold on the paint bucket tool, I will also have access to gradient tool, paint bucket tool, and 3D material drop tool. So as you can see, Photoshop has actually a lot of different tools on its Tools panel that you can use. You shouldn't worry if you don't know what all these different tools do, because you will gradually learn about them. But what is interesting about Photoshop is that if you hover your mouse cursor over any of these tools, a small window will appear which will explain to you what that particular tool does, which is kind of useful whenever you don't know what a specific tool is for. You can just hover your mouse over that specific tool and learn about it. Now let's look at another important part of Photoshop's user interface, which is this ribbon below the menu bar. This is called the Tools Control Panel, and it includes all the options that you have with regard to the tools that you have selected. So look, for instance, what happens to these options when I change or select another tool. So as you can see, it changes when I select a different tool. So The Tools control panel actually shows all the options regarding to the tool that I have selected. For example, if I select the brush tool, you will see that I have access to all the options related to the brush tool. For example, I can change the size of my brush and make it quite large. So you can see that this is much larger than before. I can reduce the size like this, or I can select from any of the brush presets. For example, I can select a soft round brush, which will result in a much softer brush stroke. Look at these options and what happens to them when I select another tool, for example, the paint bucket tool. As you can see, the options have changed, and now the options related to the paint bucket tool appear here. So take your time and select different tools on the Tools panel and see what different options it gives to you on the Tools control panel. Another important part of Photoshop's interface is the Layers panel. The Layers panel is actually where you can see all the layers that you have in your scene, and also you can have access to different options related to your layers. Remember that Photoshop is a layer-based program, and that means that you should always pay attention to the layer that you have selected, because you can only change or manipulate the layer or the object on the layer that you have selected. For example, imagine that I would like to move this circle. So right now, if I just use the Move tool and click on the screen and drag, as you can see, I'm moving the wrong object. This is because I have selected the text layer here. So if I want to move this circle, what I should do is to find the right layer and then move that layer as I want. So it's very important to pay attention to the layer that you have selected before making any changes. You should also remember that the order of the layers are also important in Photoshop. What does that mean? Well, it means that the order of the layers actually define which layers are on top of the other layer. For instance, if you look at the layer panel right now, you'll see that the text layer that we have here is on top of the ellipse layer. And if you look at the screen, you will see that the text is completely readable because it is on top of the circle. But if I just drag and drop the text layer below the ellipse layer, see what happens on the screen. Now the circle is actually on top of the text layer. So it's very important to pay attention to the order of the layers when you're working in Photoshop. If you want to create a new layer in Photoshop, what you need to do is to just go to the layer panel down here, and you will see this small plus icon. If you click on this button, which is called Create a New Layer will appear. And of course, you can use this new layer to do whatever you want. In order to delete a specific layer, what you need to do is to select that layer and then click on this trash bin icon down here. If I click on this one, I will delete that specific layer. So let me also delete this layer here as well. As I have mentioned earlier, you can also change the properties of a specific layers in your layers panel. For example, I can select my ellipse layer here and then change the opacity of this layer. The result is that this circle here will become more transparent. There are other options, other properties of layers that you can change, and I leave it to you to look at them and explore them and see what each one of these options and properties does.